you very much, and a very warm welcome to everyone to Question Time in Minstead. It's a packed hall, and I think that's in recognition of, first of all, the calibre of our two panellists here this evening. I'm going to introduce them to you in a moment. But also the real desire of people here to understand a little bit more about it. I think, thank you for that. I'd like to move to introduce our two panellists. And here on my right, Sir Vince Cable. He studied economics at the University of Cambridge and Glasgow. He was an economics advisor to the Kenyan government and to the Commonwealth Secretary General. He was a chief economist for Shell from 1995 to 97, before being elected as the Liberal Democrat MP for Twickenham in 1997. He was then Secretary of State for Business Innovation Skills in the coalition government from 2010 to 2015. Would you please show a warm welcome to Vince Cable. And on my left, Daniel Hannon, who studied at Oxford University. We've got Cambridge and Oxford, dark blue line, that way around. Worked as a speechwriter for Michael Howard and William Hague. Besides his interest in politics, he's a writer and journalist. He's won prizes for his blogs. He was elected as a member of the European Parliament in 1999, representing the southeast of England for the Conservative Party. He's become Secretary General of the Alliance of European Conservatives and Reformists, the AECR. Would you please show a very warm welcome to Daniel Hammond. So the way we've expressed it here on your sheets, given all that we've heard this evening, how would you appeal to those still undecided to vote in or out? And Daniel, it's your turn first on this one.
There isn't a status quo option on the ballot paper on the 23rd of June. We stand at a fork in the pathway. One pathway leads on to a common market, not common government, kind of relationship that is enjoyed by every other geographically European state outside the European Union, one that will allow us to exploit our advantages, being linked as we are by kinship, migration, language and law to every other continent and archipelago. The other road leads towards deeper integration. We know that the EU is responding to the Schengen crisis and to the Euro crisis as it has responded to everything else by demanding more political amalgamation. So that's our choice. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, imagine it like this. If you take the... let me switch the metaphor slightly. Suppose that you were sitting on a bus, and the bus is heading somewhere that you're uncomfortable. And at the front of the bus, the destination is very clearly marked. It's going to be a united Europe, right? Just in case you missed the point, the bus driver, now that you descry his features under his peaked cap, he bears an uncanny resemblance to Jean-Claude Juncker. The bus driver keeps turning around and singing out what are going to be the intervening stops. We're going to have the harmonisation of social security. We're going to have the harmonisation of taxation. We're going to have a European army to scare Vladimir Putin, he says. I'm not sure how scary it will be, the prospect of Juncker saying to NATO, guys, we'll take this from here, but maybe he's right. Now, here's the question. If you don't want to go where that bus is heading, what's the closest thing to the status quo? Is it literally to remain immobile, rooted in your seat, as the bus purrs along its route to the destination? Or isn't it to get off the bus and wave it on its way amicably? In other words, to say to the other member countries, guys, if this is what you want to do, you want this amalgamation, your euro, your president, your foreign policy, your police and military capacity and all the rest of it, fine. Do it with our goodwill and our blessing, but we will not compromise our democracy. We will not bargain with our independence. Let me finish with an appeal for optimism, because I think this is what it's all about. It's about self-confidence, self-belief. We are a great country with huge advantages. There's a reason that the in queue is so much longer than the out queue in Britain. It's a good problem to have that half the world wants to move here. We're doing a lot of things right. All we need is the self-belief to think that we can flourish, making our own laws while remaining on friendly terms with our neighbours. This was a long, winter. It went on wet and cold well into March and April. But look about you now, this week. See the buds and the blossom. Feel the pulse quickening under your feet. Taste the air. My friends, high on the Hampshire Downs, the larks and the linnets are singing.
My first point, which is one I made at the very beginning, is that what we do need to be able to do is to be very clear about what the choice is. What is it, if you decide to vote Brexit, what is it that you want? What is going to happen next? Because the truth is, there is a whole variety of options. You could decide that you want to retain the merits of the single market, as I said, something the British negotiated, Mrs. Thatcher's great achievement, with all the economic benefits that flow from that. But if you do decide you want to leave the European Union but stay in the single market, of course you lost much of this sovereignty that Daniel is so concerned about. You get the Norwegian solution. Or alternatively, you may decide you just want to walk away from the whole thing and the rules associated with it, and that has massive implications. Now, there are pros and cons of all of these things. There are pros and cons within the European Union. I've acknowledged that there are things that need changing, need reforming. But we do need to know what the alternative is. And what Daniel said at various stages of the evening, and he was quite frank about it, is that this is a motion to leave. What happens next, we don't know. I mean, it's very much up to the people who've won the campaign, if we decide to leave, to find some other alternative. We have no idea what it is. And I feel very disturbed about entering into a period of upheaval and uncertainty. And I think the Prime Minister has been absolutely right when he says the central problem with the Brexit campaign is that it is a leap in the dark. You have a wide variety of alternatives with radically different alternatives, directly different implications, and we do not know what would be the result of it. Let me just conclude with the basic issue that we've come to at the end, and I thought Daniel was quite right to focus on it, which is what we mean by sovereignty and having our own laws and our own democracy. Of course, it isn't just a formal business of passing laws. It is a question of power, because we're in a world where we have some major powers to deal with, the United States, China, increasingly India, Russia, some malign, some beneficial. And to deal with them, you have to deal with them from a position of strength, whether it's to do with security or climate change. When they're dealing with the European Union, they're dealing with a powerful force representing 500 million people. They're dealing with us, they're dealing with a perfectly reputable, serious, civilized country, but not remotely on the same scale of influence. Let me just take one simple example in relation to corporate power. One of my earlier ventures in the coalition, which some of you may remember, was dealing with Mr. Rupert Murdoch. Well, Mr. Rupert Murdoch had a very telling statement. He said, when I go to Brussels, they tell me what to do. When I go to number 10 Downing Street, I tell them what to do. And that, of course, isn't just about politics, it's about corporate power. And by cooperating within the European Union, and of course it involves loss of sovereignty, because that's what cooperation in practice means, we're able to deal with the big corporate entities, the big global challenges, whether about security, global war and others, dealing with powerful states which are emerging, like China and India, from a position of strength. And I think there is a very strong case for retaining that. And that does involve loss of sovereignty. Of course it does. Of course that's what it involves. But it's a grown-up way of doing it, getting beyond traditional nationalism into a genuinely cooperative framework. And I would urge you to stay with the European Union.
so be ready to cast your votes again. Just before we do that, though, I wanted to apologise to all those who wanted to ask questions that weren't able to ask them individually. I hope we covered most of the major points. We obviously tried to in laying out the 6 main question areas. I believe we've covered most of the important things one way and another. If you still feel you've got more questions, you may be able to get one of these 2 gentlemen afterwards and get your own personal question across. But thank you all for putting in those questions. I'm sorry we haven't been able to get to perhaps every single one of them. But now it's time for the poll. So we want a show of hands, as before. We'll start with you. Raise your hand, all those in favour of remain. Okay, let's have a good look round. Those in favour of leave. Okay. And those who are still undecided. Okay. Can I now ask, this is the truth moment, I'd like to have a show of hands from all those who've changed their mind from the first poll, the beginning of the evening, to now. So put your hands up now if you've changed your mind. Okay, that's not bad. It's good. I was worried that in Minstead we had such a sort of determined group of people that nobody would change their mind. But we've had a change of mind. I'm going to leave you all to try and work out which side got more. I'm not going to get the dangerous area saying maybe there are a few more this way or that way. Work it out for yourselves. Now, the last thing I want to do is to thank very sincerely our 2 panellists. I'd like to thank all of you for not just coming along this evening, for putting in your questions, for taking part. It's been a great evening. We've really packed the hall, so I'm very grateful to all of you. George is hovering behind me. I do want to, before he starts, just to say a big thank you to all those people, George in particular, but all his helpers who've made this evening possible. So he worked